Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada Ki. My dear King Parikshit, the sons of Kartavirya Arjuna, who were defeated by the superior strength of Parashuram, never achieved happiness, for they always remembered the killing of their father. Purport. Jamadagni was certainly very powerful due to his austerities, but because of a slight offense by his poor wife, Renuka, he ordered that she be killed. This certainly was a sinful act, and therefore Jamadagni was killed by the sons of Kartavirya Arjuna, as described herein. Lord Parashuram was also infected by sin because of killing Kartavirya Arjuna, although this was not very offensive. Therefore, whether one be Kartavirya Arjuna, Lord Parashuram, Jamadagni, or whoever one may be, one must act very cautiously and sagaciously. Otherwise, one must suffer the result of sinful activities. This is the lesson we receive from Vedic literature. Om Agyanatimirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobistam Stabitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapatantikam Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Bacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're picking up where we left off in last week. Pretty extreme story we have here. Just to sum up, there is some disagreement about a wish-fulfilling cow, which ends up with people getting killed. Things escalate, and finally Lord Parashuram decides to kill the entire ruling class of the planet Earth, not once or twice, but 21 times. So this is pretty extreme. And the lesson learned here, whether one be Kartavirya Arjuna, Lord Parashuram, Jamadagni, or whoever one may be, one must act very cautiously and sagaciously, otherwise one must suffer the results of sinful activities. So what's going wrong here is that they're not following authority. So this is why Lord Parashuram comes to... you see, the Lord speaks to us. And if we don't listen, He gives us a practical demonstration of what is actually the result of our activities. So this is what Lord Parashuram does here. If the ruling class does not take advice from the intellectual class or the saintly class, the brahmanas, this is what's going to happen. Because the ruling class are working with such intense passion, so much karma is involved. They're taking on, I believe Manu Samhita says, 1/6 of the karma of the population. This is very heavy karma. So unless they check with the brahmanas who are detached, who are not dealing with such heavy karma, and who thereby can be equipoised, it will escalate like this. And we can see how that goes if we look at the world today. There's not really a lot of consultation with brahmanas going on today. And what happens is that culture is actually destroyed. This is the problem for the ruling classes. They're dealing with nations, with whole people. It's not just their own little world they're dealing with. They're responsible for everybody. So we saw that when Mlechers left India because of Kali Yuga, because of the degradation of Vedic principles, generally Prabhupada says that those with Shudra mentality generally went towards Africa. Those with a Vaishya mentality generally went towards East Asia. and those with a Kshatriya nature generally went towards Europe. So Shudra means just working class, just your regular guy, have a job, have a life. Vaishya means businessman. You're thriving on profit. You see opportunities everywhere and you go for them. Kshatriya means administration, means the ruling class, means you have an idea that there's a right and a wrong way of doing things, and you will get involved to make sure that the right way of doing things is upheld. And the Brahmana class, or the intellectual class, are functioning purely on knowledge. They don't really care if it is applied or not, just the fact that the principles, that they understand the principles of existence, that in itself makes them happy. So they don't really care about opportunities or how is it going. They are equipoised just in themselves, because they understand fully that whatever calamities come, they also go. This is the material world, so everything is going up and down and changing all the time. So there's no need to get too frustrated by whatever comes our way. So in this way, we see that in an ideal Vedic society, progressively they have more and more responsibility, because the Sudra, the worker, basically he has a responsibility to himself and his family. Maybe whoever is his boss or his authority, there is a responsibility to act humbly and submissively to that person. But that's pretty much where it stops. Then you just lead your life, try and chant Hare Krishna and go back to Godhead. That's it. Very simple. The Vaishya, the businessman, there's a little more going on here, because depending on how you choose to run your business, other people are actually affected by that. We saw, I'm not going to do that one. But we can see how in a modern society that is very much Vaishya based. It's very much show me the money. It's very much based on business, our modern society today. So we see that actually it's not as glorious as we would like to think, because we have a lot of people who are actually poor. They may even have a lot of money by judging by global standards, but it's just that where they live is just equally expensive. So when people in India, I'm based in India, they hear about what people make, what money they make in London or in Denmark or something like that, they can't believe it. But then when I tell them how much a bottle of water costs, they also can't believe it. So, it balances out, and actually you have a lot of poor people in the West. In fact, if we say poor means you worry about money, there's a lot of poor people. Far more poor people in the West than in a place like India, because they don't actually worry that much about money. So they need to be controlled. The Vaishyas need to be controlled by the ruling class. Otherwise, business becomes like a cancer. It never ends. I always use the example of the old Mr. Rockefeller, one of the biggest Vaishya families in America, was asked by a journalist, how much money do you need? He's a billionaire. He's got billions and billions of dollars. And his answer was, just a little more. Right? So that's the universal answer of the Vaishya. There's always an opportunity for some gain, and it will always be taken, because that's just the mentality that the Vaishya functions under. That's the inspiration. So then we have the whole practical society structure in place. However, like we started out saying, the Kshatriyas then are dealing with all the rest of the people. They are responsible for the whole society, and that's a lot of passion. Anyone who's ever been in any kind of position of authority will understand and know that you are being harassed. If not always, then at least from time to time by those who are dependent on you. Because their way of solving problem is to go to you, and then it's up to you to solve the problem. Now imagine you're doing that for a whole country. That's going to be some intense passion. So therefore we have this fourth class of the Brahmanas who are, their job is actually to be aloof. Because if you're aloof, if you have nothing to gain and nothing to lose, if you have arranged your lives in such a way that you have nothing that people can actually take away from you, and there is nothing anyone has that you want, that you desire, then you can be completely equipoised, and you can be completely honest. Prabhupada could be extremely honest, sometimes where you're thinking, like, how can, at least to the point where none of us could say anything like it, when he would smash Mayavadis. There's one story of this Mayavadi who challenges Prabhupada, and he totally smashes him. You're a demon, you're worthless, you're nonsense, everything you're saying, very heavy. And this Mayavadi, he surrenders. He says, yes, I'm a demon, I'm totally, and he bows down, touches Prabhupada's feet, and starts to cry. Now, what Prabhupada does is he just leaves the room. He doesn't reciprocate at all. He just leaves the room. And when this Mayavadi looks up and finds out that he's just gone, he says, Jai. And he starts laughing, Jai, Jai. This is in one of the Prabhupada memories. So we can't do that. But Prabhupada can, because he's completely aloof. There is nothing he wants, there's no lamentation, there's no desires, the only desire is to serve the absolute truth, meaning Krishna in his Bhagavan form. Less will also do. So at least the Brahmana's activities, what we're talking about here is Varna. Varna means occupation. So in the Brahmana's occupation, he has to arrange his life in such a way that he will not get disturbed by these tides of material energy. They are always changing this way, that way, and they will remain fixed, even when things get a little too exciting, like we have here. So when that doesn't happen, then you have these extreme cases where millions of people lives are lost and so much sin is incurred. Now we also hear, of course, that we're none of these things. We're spirit soul. We're all transcendental, and we just chant Hare Krishna. But that's not really what we do. We are chanting Hare Krishna for a couple of hours, and then we have an occupation. We have a life. We have to maintain this body, because this body is our instrument for expressing our relationship with creation and God. So if you want to be a devotee of the Lord, you have to express the devotion. It's not enough that you just say it. You would generally express it. If you have a relationship to someone, you would generally express that relationship. Appreciation is nice, but if you do some service, that's more nice, because there's some interaction, something's going on. So those activities fall under one of these four. It's true that we are not that activity, but we engage in that activity, and when we do, there are rules. There is some kind of higher system in place, and this is a system given to us by Krishna. So it is a facility. It is he's doing us a favor, because we don't have to invent the wheel. We can just take shelter of these rules, because actually the rules are given by Krishna. So they're an extension of Krishna. If we engage according to them, then our activities will be an extension of our devotion. They will not. So sin means when you act materially, when you act in a way where your activities are not connected with Krishna. You see them as separate, right? There's something is for God. I go to the temple, I do my worship, I chant my Hare Krishna, and then I go out and I work for me, because I need money, I want the new flat screen TV, and I've earned it, right? That is technically sinful. It's not very sinful. It's not like, many other things. But technically, if you want to get really down to the principle, that's a problem, because you're seeing it as separate from the Lord. The Lord is doing everything. He's maintaining everything. So what are you doing actually? So you're either serving the Lord or you're serving His energy. And if we see that energy in connection with the Lord, then it's spiritualized, then it's fine. So that's why we want to engage in activities under the direction of the Varna ashram system. Because in that way, we secure ourselves from getting too entangled. So this is the Varna side. This is just the occupation. The Varna side is like, you could say, how we interact with the material energy, right? And then we have the ashram side. That is how we situate ourselves so that we can engage with the spiritual activities. So we have 4 ashrams, 4 houses, which are going progressively from brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. And this is how you would usually lead your life from a Vedic perspective. Of course, these are guidelines, so it never really works out perfectly like scripture. But that's okay. If we just accept the principles of this, then always there's some in the detail that we will always be kind of in a different situation now and again. So brahmacharya means student life. You act detached, you act on dharma, means the eternal principles of existence, and you become sense-controlled. And then you enter the householder life, where you use all this knowledge. Technically, a grihastha is called a grihastha brahmachari, because he should still remain sense-controlled and take that knowledge and that ability to be austere. He should take that with him to the grihastha ashram. Because what happens in the grihastha ashram is that also here facilities increase. And with facilities also comes increased risk of getting distracted by the facilities. So the ability to see, okay, why do I have this couch? What's the problem? Or what's the benefit? Where is the connection between the couch and Krishna? If it's nice to sit in, or if I have a fight with the wife, I can spend the night there. Not so good. But if I can have a program and then we can have a speaker here, and then it's nice, people can come to my house, we can chant, we can hear Krishna Katha, and it'll be a nice environment. Then suddenly we've made the connection. We just have to make it in our consciousness that we understand there is a connection. Then the fight with the wife will come, and we will need to spend the night on the couch sometimes. But the reason we have the couch is not for that. The reason we have the couch is so that we can connect it with Krishna. Then it works out. So if we're able to do that, go into our house, look at everything we have. Where is the connection with Krishna? Then we're rightly situated. It can be, you can maybe take like 10 steps. As long as you end with Krishna, it's fine. If you are able to, or you're a little more detached, then you can just progress through brahmachari without need to go into the grihastha ashram. Basically what happens is, it's the same principle of masculine and feminine, just that the brahmachari is like the wife of the guru, you could say. He's just living under the care and protection of the guru, doing the service that the guru suggests he does, and then it all works out like that. Now, for the grihastha, these facilities will become attachments. They may be attachment that somehow are connected with Krishna, but still we will have to give them up at some point. That's why the Vedic paradigm is preemptive. They are proactive, you could say. So at a point where the children are somewhat grown up, they would enter vanaprastha. Vanaprastha means just you reverse the process. Instead of increasing facility, you start decreasing. It can be done in different ways. I mean, we hear from Shastra, go to the forest, live off tree bark and berries and stuff like that. Not strictly necessary. But the principle, again, is that you decrease facility, right? So you don't need the children's room anymore, or whatever. You just decrease. The programs now will be done at some other grihasta's house. You don't have to have the programs at your house. Instead, younger grihastas will come and ask for advice from you, and because you've been there, done that, you're not really entangled so much yourself. You can give some sound advice. Stuff that you wouldn't go to a sannyasi with, stuff about just regular life, you can go to the vanaprasthas with, and they will be very nice authorities, because they fully understand the situation you're in, and they sympathize with all the emotions and stuff like that. The sannyasi generally wouldn't. So they can give very sound advice. And then when you've done that for a few years, however many it takes, then it's time to be completely renounced in consciousness. Means you take sannyas. And sannyas means, sannyas is an ashram, but basically it's a state of mind where you just use whatever is available. It may be a lot, it may be a little. Prabhupada, perfect example. If he doesn't have anything, he just goes to Tompkins Square Park and chants. See what happens, The holy name will attract. And later, he's picked up in Rolls Royces and temples are shooting up everywhere, and it doesn't change anything. We can also see the Pandavas. They're in the forest, everything's for Krishna. They have a whole kingdom, everything's for Krishna, and they give up the kingdom, everything's still for Krishna. It doesn't matter, because they're on that sannyas level where everything is just seen in relationship to Krishna. There's no distraction. So in this way you would progress through the ashrams. And the ultimate point, of course, is to go back to Godhead. To understand that there is absolutely nothing of value in the material world. Now we have to also explain that a little bit, because what does that mean? Is that, nothing's any... When we say the material world, what we're talking about is seeing things separate from Krishna. If we're seeing things in connection with Krishna, with spiritual activities, we don't call them material. Just like the body of the Guru, it's an offense to call it a material body, because it is our link to Krishna, actually. So then it is spiritualized. It is actually as good as the internal potency. So this is the point that we need to arrive at. And however we do that, it doesn't matter, as long as we get there. So it may be very much mode of goodness. This is often when you see, we were just at a program yesterday with a very nice Indian family. Very much mode of goodness, but very clean, very tidy and well behaved, and a strong, family connection. That makes it smooth. Or it may be a little more rowdy, like some of the Western families or Western devotees who just walk out straight out of a kind of mlecture life. But because they've seen how much the material energy can hurt, they surrender fully. They just completely surrender. They get very fired up, and it's a more bumpy ride, because they don't have the same piety, they don't have the same culture, but they're going. And it's glorious, it's perfect, because they're going in the right direction. It doesn't actually matter where we are, as long as we are steadfast in our determination to walk in the right direction towards Krishna. So when we do that, we have to find a balance. How much can we push? How much can we renounce immediately? How much do we need to work with the mind? Because our material mind, this little child we have inside our head, is actually the one at the wheel. When our body is doing things, actually it's because the mind allows it to be done. If the mind is not on board, we can't actually do it. So we have to be careful not to push the mind too much. So this is a balance. How do we find that balance? Again, it comes back to authority. Usually we have this idea that we know everything, and I know myself, I am myself, so, who's going to tell me what to do? But the problem is, Jai Shishi Radha Ko Kulananda Ki, Jai Shishi Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki, Gaur Nitai Ki. The problem is that we are in illusion. we have this idea that I am my activities, like we were saying earlier, that Varna is just an activity you engage in. It's not actually your real identity. It's an activity you engage in, and by that activity there are rules, right? If you're dependent on others, you should be careful how much you complain about them. Because if you're under their care, if they're taking care of you, it's not really fair that you complain about whatever it is they're doing, right? That's just how it works. And if you're in charge, if you're the big man, you have the responsibility that others feel secure and feel safe. That's just how it works. If you are making tons of money, you should be generous. You should give in charity, because otherwise people are not going to appreciate you. And it's not actually fair just to hoard everything for yourself. In fact, Bhagavatam says in first canto that Kali resides where gold is hoarded. So from a purely practical point of view, you don't want to go there. And if you want to be the man with the answers, don't be attached, don't have your own agenda. Because how will people be able to trust you if you have some kind of underlying agenda? They can't. So these are just the rules of engagement, right? It's not who we are, that's true, but it's how we engage. And as such, we need to work with those laws. Otherwise, there will be reactions, like it said here. So that is basically the crux of it, that we have to acknowledge that in order for us to progress spiritually, we have to accept authority. That is what spirituality means. We say there are 3 different ways of attaining knowledge. Prajaksha, Anuman, and Shabda. So Prajaksha means through our senses we can perceive something, and that is some kind of knowledge. And Anuman means brain, right? We can, with our mind, we can figure out, okay, this must be this, that must be that, and add and subtract. And then Shabda means authority. So the senses are imperfect, right? There are many things going on we don't know anything about. Just on the other side of that wall, many things may be going on. I have no idea. There are sounds I can't hear. There are colors I can't see. So, how will I get an accurate view of reality through my senses? But there are also other problems. I'm in illusion. I may see something, even though I see it, I may mistake it for something else. The example is given of a rope and a snake, right? I see something, it looks like something, but maybe it's something else. Usually we get that when people look at us. If we try to interpret, at least for men, this is very difficult. Women are better at interpreting a look, but men are not always very good at it. So why did he look at me like that? And actually what happened was he just remembered that he had forgot something, So this is illusion. We think we see something, but we think it's something other than what we actually see. Now, we also commit mistakes. We may have the right information, we may have the right intentions, but because of whatever, it just doesn't pan out like that. And then finally, we have the propensity to cheat. This is just a fact, that we have desires, we wish things were in a certain way, and usually it's not exactly like that. So if we can bend, we're not lying, we're just bending the truth a little bit. But basically that is cheating, right? So these are the 4 defects that make it impossible for us to actually make any spiritual progress using our senses as our main source of knowledge. Now, the Anuman, with the brain, that's very popular in this modern day and age. Everybody thinks they're an intellectual, at least in the Western Europe sphere, and they can really figure it out. Problem is that Anuman is dependent on one of the other. You have to feed it with something. I can say a golden mountain. I may not have seen a golden mountain, but I've seen gold and I've seen a mountain. So it's based on something, right? Either I've heard of it from an authority or someone else, or I've seen it with my senses, and then I can combine with it. So that doesn't work isolated. So we're left with Shabda, with authority, because authority means that there is some greater something greater than me at work, right? Something becomes authority when people agree on it. It becomes a more authoritative statement. That's why we have democracy, because the majority speaks. It must have some value. Of course, that's a circumstantial authority, because we know that the majority is not always right. The question is, are they the best, or are they just the most? If you go to especially if you have some specialized knowledge you would like to know something about, if you go to the street and ask just random people for a day, how would you solve some kind of plumbing issue? You're not going to come up with a very good answer. Well, but the majority says, of course the majority would say, call a plumber. So then again we're back to the knowledge, the authority of knowledge through authority. Now ultimately authority means Shastra, because in Shastra we have timeless knowledge that can be applied at any time in any place. And then we have Guru, the principle of Guru, someone who is spiritually more advanced than us. He can then tell us how to apply this knowledge into our own life. And then the sadhus, we can then test when we are applying if we're doing it right by those around us. How do they generally react when we do it? This is a secure platform. And it's based on sadhana, actually, because only if we acknowledge that we're not the controller and enjoyer of our lives, and the whole world indeed, will we accept authority. There are many bogus gurus out there, and many materialists are also using authority. They're always quoting from some academic book or something. So they're using authority, but they're not using proper authority. They're misusing authority. So you need to have some kind of sadhana, some spiritual practice to actually purify yourself so that you will seek out the bona fide authority, the bona fide guru, the bona fide spiritual authority. And this is what we see. This is not happening in the West today. Those who are in charge, they don't have any sadhana. They don't have any method for controlling the mind. The mind has desires, and if we try to satisfy those desires will just grow. It is, the example is giving of putting fuel on a fire. Initially it dies down and then it blazes up immediately after, even greater, right? So this is why Prabhupada said at one time that a material desire is a desire you can't fulfill. It will just grow. The more you try to fulfill it, the more it will grow. And we see how that happens, this tendency to try to squeeze enjoyment out of the material world is completely rampant today. It doesn't matter what it is, usually it's some of the four vices, right? Alcohol or intoxication, illicit sex life, gambling, or eating or consuming various kind of dubious items that may not be entirely good for you. If you don't have any spiritual practice, it's very difficult to keep these things under control. That means that anything you say will be tainted by, what can I achieve by saying this? So we see, even among our so-called intellectual class, that many things that are obviously wrong, are being propagated as truth. Will it cause cancer to eat meat? You will find many PhDs who will say, no, we can't say it. Smoking was also, now it's not so much anymore because it's just too stupid. But is it unhealthy to smoke? No, we don't know. We just need and this is because there's no sadhana, there's no actual respect for real authority, that these things become kind of random. So this is why it's so important that we follow these principles and we acknowledge that spiritual benefit is only through internally deep sadhana and externally the appreciation, not just the accept, but the respect of authority. There's a difference. we may accept and then, but actually the respect that whoever is in the authority, they may not do everything perfectly. God knows they don't do everything perfectly. They're people. But that they have taken on that responsibility is a sacrifice. And whether or not they should be in that position, that is not actually up to me. If I get too worried about that, I'm just going to take away focus from my sadhana, from my internal process. So it doesn't work. The good thing about it is, if you do that, if you acknowledge what is my responsibility, what is not my responsibility, you will free resources that you can use on your spiritual progress, regardless that your authority may be a nonsense. Maybe he's misunderstanding where you're coming from. Maybe he's not treating you right. And maybe he's just too busy with other stuff. But if you just apply that principle of respect to authority, then actually you will make wonderful progress. And this is just something you can actually see. That those who advance quickly, they generally don't have a big problem. They may point out something that they disagree with, but they don't get caught up in it. Just let it be and move on, because there will always, this whole material universe is based on false ego. That means illusion. That means something will always be going wrong. So if we get too entangled and too caught up in that, then we'll get stuck. That will be our life. And we will not make spiritual progress. So this is what goes wrong here, and why Lord Parashuram, it said that as we surrender, Krishna reciprocates. So this is how, when Kshatriyas, they don't deal properly with authority, then it goes horribly wrong, and millions of people end up getting killed and stuff like that, right? So that is why we can apply these principles in our own life, regardless of what Varna situation we're in, what ashram situation we're in. The principle of authority is a fundamental principle in spiritual life. I'm going to take a few questions now. Time is just about up. So if anyone has any comments, questions, chastisements,